Welcome to the Joy Reset, where we're going to find out why your sense of joy has vanished, why everything feels so flat now, how to gain clarity on where we want to go, and finally I'm going to give you a 7-day reset protocol you can implement right now so that 1 week from today you feel different. So a few years ago, my life was essentially a sequence of distractions and addictions. I'd wake up, immediately grab my phone, and scroll for an hour before even getting out of bed. At work, I was constantly on social media or watching YouTube videos. I'd take about 4 cigarette breaks before lunch, or I'd be running out for a coffee every few hours. And after work, I would go straight to the pub to drink the evening away with my friends. Now, to some people, that might not actually sound like a bad situation. An easygoing job, plenty of freedom to slack off, and a bunch of mates you can enjoy a beer with. But I was fucking miserable because I wanted to be doing something meaningful with my life. I wanted to build something, to create something. I wanted to be something. But instead, I was just existing, scrolling. And what was worse, I would quit every few weeks, delete my apps, throw away my cigarettes, and swear off drinking. But nothing ever stuck because I was fighting the wrong battle. Everybody thinks this is a willpower problem, but it's not. It's a dopamine problem. And the reason you feel empty isn't because you're lazy or broken. It's because your brain's reward system has been hijacked. So I'm going to show you exactly how to reset your brain so you can get your joy, motivation, and energy back in the next 7 days. No monk mode, no 30-day cold shower bullshit, just a proven step-by-step protocol that rebuilds your brain 1 day at a time so you can start moving in the right direction. Let's start with the fundamental truth. Your joy is chemical. So much of what you feel, motivation, pleasure, drive, excitement, is all controlled by a chemical called dopamine. Your dopamine system is incredibly complex and it serves several key functions. It drives goal-directed behavior. When you set a goal like, I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to build a business, your dopamine system activates to give you the motivation to pursue that goal. It's essential for the learning required to achieve rewards. And as you work towards a goal, dopamine helps you figure out what works and what doesn't. It powers higher level cognition. Your creativity, logical reasoning, and problem solving all depend on healthy dopamine function. And it controls movement in pursuit of a reward. So when you're hungry and you walk to the fridge, dopamine is what activates that movement to get you there. Your brain has 3 major dopamine pathways, and understanding them is key to understanding why you feel the way you do. The mesocortical pathway handles planning, attention, and motivation. This pathway goes to your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term thinking and rational decision-making. When you're working towards a big goal and staying focused, this pathway is active. When you're using your creative instincts or solving problems with logic, this pathway is active. The mesolimbic pathway is all about pleasure, reward-based learning, and what your brain decides is important. This is your reward center. It's supposed to help you figure out what behaviors lead to good outcomes so that you can repeat them. But this pathway can be hijacked by addictive substances or technology. Finally, we've got the nigrostriatal pathway, which controls movement, habit formation, and physical goal pursuit. This is why you need motivation to move, but also why moving sometimes can create motivation. These 2 things are linked by this bundle of cells. So these 3 pathways create the foundation of your motivation system. And modern life has completely fried them. Because whilst this system evolved to help us chase big goals, solve problems, and propel ourselves forwards with our accomplishments, it can just as easily get hijacked by any one of a series of substances or technologies. Let's talk about our biggest dopamine hijackers. There are 2 types, chemical or behavioral, and we'll start with chemical. Most of these are generally not a huge problem for people, but it's important to understand how the addictive mechanism works. All of these substances trigger massive dopamine surges in the mesolimbic reward pathway. Your brain learns that these drugs give us a great feeling. Then it pushes you to repeat the behavior to get access to the drug again in future. This is why people go back for a second drink or a second line or a second bump, whatever it is. Alcohol creates relaxation and causes a surge of dopamine in the reward center. The dopamine surge is what gives you that pleasant buzz when you first start drinking alcohol. And it tells your brain, remember everything you did to get this feeling because we need to do it again. Caffeine boosts dopamine signaling. This makes everything you do while caffeinated feel more rewarding. It's why people often end up having favorite coffee mugs or little rituals around drinking coffee. Nicotine directly stimulates dopamine release and it creates incredibly powerful associations. This is why smoking is so hard to quit. I'm mentioning these not to shame anyone, but to help you understand the mechanism. Every time dopamine is released in your reward center, your brain saves all the data around how you got that reward. It builds a neural pathway that makes repeating the behavior in future more easy. Now, we can see clearly when we look at someone with a substance use problem how it's negatively impacting them. We see the repeated patterns of behavior. We see the impact the chemical has on their body, their weight, their health, or their mind. Less obvious, though, are the people suffering with behavioral addictions. Here's where it gets really interesting and where most of us are actually struggling. Behavioral addictions work differently than chemical ones, but they are just as powerful. They hook us through something called a variable reward mechanism. If we look at gambling, the reason slot machines are so addictive isn't just that you might win money, it's that you never know whether you're going to win or not. That unpredictability creates a dopamine surge more powerful than a predictable reward, because your brain's learning system is desperately trying to figure out the pattern for getting this reward in future. The problem is, when rewards are completely random, the dopamine system never powers down, which is how you get pathological gamblers. You've seen those videos of old grandmas at the slot machines in Las Vegas, just zombified, pulling the levers over and over and over, right? Social media works in the exact same way. You scroll, 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 and you never know when you're going to find something interesting or funny or validating. Your brain can never complete the learning cycle, so it keeps spiking dopamine, which keeps you scrolling indefinitely. Pornography uses the exact same mechanism. Novel stimuli, endless variety, and you never know what you're going to find next. When rewards are unpredictable, your brain never finishes learning. It stays trapped in a cycle of craving and seeking, and these platforms have been designed that way on purpose. So let me show you how this works with a normal example, how your brain is supposed to learn. Let's say you're driving home from work and you spot a new restaurant. Your brain releases a burst of dopamine that says, pay attention to this, it could be useful. Once you get home, you tell your partner and you go online and order food from that restaurant. It arrives a little bit later and it's delicious. So your brain releases even more dopamine as a reward, cementing this memory, right? This place is good. Remember how to get food here. A few weeks later, you order from the same restaurant again, same great meal, but this time your dopamine response is smaller because you're learning. Eventually, after ordering the food a few times, the dopamine response fades almost completely. You've learned everything you need to learn. The novelty is now gone, and this is how normal reward learning works. The problem is, digital platforms have found a way to hack this. Here's what happens with gambling, social media, pornography, or any other variable reward system. You engage in the behavior, you pull the slot machine lever, or you scroll your feed, or you click to the next video, but because the rewards are unpredictable, your brain never completes the learning cycle. Is it 3 clicks for a good video? No, 5, no, 12, no, 7, no, 22. The randomness tricks your brain to keep you repeating the behavior in order to figure out the pattern. But there is no pattern, so the dopamine system never powers down. It stays in this state of maybe next time forever. The mesolimbic reward pathway remains constantly active. The dopamine never normalizes. You receive constant spikes whilst using the platform, and that's not an accident. Every major social media platform, every tube site, every addictive app has specifically been designed to exploit this vulnerability in your brain. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Pornhub, they're all designed on the same variable reward system. These platforms create an endless dopamine loop through unpredictable content quality. Some posts are interesting, most aren't, but you never know which is which until you've scrolled for several hours. Add to that the social validation, likes, comments, shares, all come at unpredictable intervals. And then we've got algorithmically personalized content, which means the platform is constantly learning what keeps you hooked and serving you more of it. And the result is your mesolimbic pathway never powers down. Your brain stays hooked in a perpetual state of wanting more. And worse, the addictive cycle is repeated automatically. You don't consciously pick up your phone and doom scroll for 2 hours. It's happening at a subconscious level most of the time. And this leads to the kind of time blindness where you check your phone for 5 minutes and then you look up 2 hours later like you've just woken up from a dream. So what happens when you're chronically overstimulated? On the left, you can see normal dopamine receptors. There are plenty of them, and they're all working properly. Normal activities like exercise, good conversation, or meaningful work all feel rewarding because those receptors are responding to normal levels of dopamine. On the right, you can see what happens after chronic overstimulation. Your brain has down-regulated receptors. There are fewer of them, and the ones that remain are far less sensitive. This is your brain trying to protect itself from the constant dopamine spiking caused by scrolling or porn or drinking or whatever your vice is. But the consequence is devastating, and it's what you're currently feeling. Normal activities no longer feel rewarding. The dopamine from a good workout or a nice conversation isn't enough to activate your reduced receptors. So you need more extreme behaviors just to feel anything at all, while everyday pleasures become meaningless. This is why you feel dead inside. It's not you, it's your down-regulated dopamine receptors. But don't panic, because we can reverse it. So if the problem is clear, why is change so hard? The reality is change is hard because the chemical we need to create change, which is dopamine, is the one that's been hijacked. Your addictive habits have created powerful neural pathways that resist disruption, and many of them are automatic. You're not consciously deciding to check your phone 50 times a day, it just happens. We use these habits to cope with uncomfortable emotions. Boredom, loneliness, stress, anxiety. Whenever we feel these things, we reach for our vice, and it becomes our default coping mechanism. Your brain has built deep behavioral grooves. Years of repetitive behaviors have created strong neural connections that fire automatically. So to change, you need to build entirely new neural pathways. And that takes time, consistency, and the right approach. Think of it like this. The old pathway is a highway. Multiple lanes, smooth pavement, you can drive it with your eyes closed essentially. The new pathway you're trying to build is more like a dirt trail through the forest. You have to use it as much as possible to turn it into a well-trodden path. But every time you choose the new behavior over the old one, you're paving that trail a little bit more, and you're weakening the old pathway and strengthening the new one. Here's what I've learned from failing to change hundreds of times in my 20s. We don't fail because we lack willpower. We fail because we lack clarity and purpose. Willpower is a limited resource. It runs out. And it runs out even faster when you don't actually know why you're doing something. But when you have a clear vision of who you are becoming and why it matters, you don't need willpower. You're pulled forward by something much, much bigger. Let me give you an example. I used to quit smoking every year at least once. Except my why was kind of bullshit. I knew it was unhealthy. I kind of wanted to improve my fitness, like how far I could run. And that was it. That was my why. It wasn't nearly strong enough to help me overcome that addiction. I wasn't clear enough on what I wanted my future to look like, or why being a non-smoker was such an important part of that. And actually at the time, I loved going out for drinks and smoking whilst I drank. That was a big part of my social life and my identity. So I ended up with two competing things, a weak why and an identity that wanted to hold on to the habit. So it's crucial you get very clear on what you want your future to look like. Because like we said before, the dopamine system evolved to help us achieve goals and imagine futures. So if you are working towards these visions, we're activating our dopamine system the way it ought to be, rather than just sedating ourselves with cheap dopamine. Before we move forward, I want you to think about what happens if you don't change. If you're drinking heavily, you already know it's damaging your health and your relationships. If you're addicted to porn, you know it's destroying your drive and any chance of real intimacy. If you're scrolling for hours every day, you know you're pissing away time that could actually change your life. So also think about the opportunity cost of your habits. 3 hours a day scrolling social media, and that's on the low end for most people. That's 21 hours a week or 1,000 hours a year. You know what you could do with 1,000 extra hours? You could write a book. Most books take around 200 hours to write. You could master a skill. It takes a roughly 500 hours of deliberate practice to get really good at something. You could transform your relationships, actually connect with people instead of staring at a screen. Just remember, if you change nothing, nothing changes. You're watching this because something isn't right. Maybe you've got big dreams, but zero execution. Maybe you've achieved some success, but your personal life is a mess. This is about course correcting, setting yourself up to actually build a life that fulfills you. And remember, this is chemical. Your lack of motivation isn't a character flaw, it's downregulated dopamine receptors. And we can fix that. All right, we're moving from theory into practice. So it's time to look in the mirror. Your habits are the physical expression of your dopamine wiring. The patterns you run every day show you exactly which neural pathways you've been strengthening. Awareness is the first step. You can't change what you refuse to see. So we're doing a behavior audit. If you've printed out your Joy Reset workbook, you can fill this in on page 10. If you prefer to do this digitally, just tell the AI coach that you want to work through the behavior audit. If you're doing this the old school way on a piece of paper, then draw a line down the middle, and on the left-hand side, write holding me back, and on the right-hand side, write propelling me forward. Now spend 5 minutes being brutally honest with yourself. What behaviors are holding you back and what is propelling you forwards? You already know the answers. You know what's derailing you, so write it down. You're not moralizing here, you're just looking at data, so no judgment. Now your problems are tangible. You've accepted that these things are holding you back. Now we can look at how to alter course. Now let's flip it. Instead of looking at where you are, let's imagine where you want to go. So draw another table, 2 columns, character traits and behaviors. Imagine the ultimate version of yourself 1 year from today. What are their character traits? What do they do every day? If they've built a successful business, what habits got them there? They're probably reading and learning. They're working on their skills consistently. They create and produce instead of just consuming. If they're in incredible shape, what do? Exercise 5 days a week, eat real food, prioritize sleep. Write it down and be specific. And if you're struggling to imagine your best self, you can try this. Imagine your worst self. What character flaws do they have? What do they do every day? What does their life look like? Write it down and then flip it. The opposite of those traits and behaviors is what becomes your target. This works because we're often more motivated to avoid pain than we are to pursue pleasure or good things. If you can clearly see what you don't want to become, that can drive you to change. And what you have now is a blueprint, a list of habits and character traits that you need to uninstall over the coming year, and a list of behaviors that we want to install. Now we're getting clear on where you're going and why you're going there. We need 2 things. We need a deep purpose for doing the things we are doing, and we need a clear route for how we are going to get there. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." And that's what this section is about. We're going to map out both the how and the why for your transformation. The Future Me cartoon, this is one of my favorite exercises. It has changed my life multiple times. All right, this is all about creating a clear vision for your desired future. So I want you to draw 2 cartoons. Don't worry about artistic skill. Stick figures are fine. This is about visualization, not art. On the left, draw your current self. Show what you're not happy with. If you're drinking too much, draw a bottle. If you're scrolling constantly, draw a phone. Show your emotional state, that you're tired, stressed, defeated, whatever it is. And then on your right-hand side, draw your future self 1 year from now. The best case scenario. Are you fit, happy, successful, traveling, building something? I want you to draw it. Then in the middle, you're going to write 3 steps that get you from your current self to your future self. I did this when I was 25. I was broke, teaching in a school I hated, partying constantly, essentially wasting my life. My current self cartoon was depressing, head down, trudging from work to the pub to home, trapped in a cycle. And then I drew my future self, traveling the world, working on a laptop, making money and feeling free. And my 3 steps were quit my job, move abroad, build a travel blog. 18 months later, I'd done all 3. I'd moved to China, I'd started a travel blog and Instagram, and I was living the life that I'd drawn. Did everything go perfectly? No, but that cartoon helped me distill a vision for my future and then gave me something to focus my action around. And it kickstarted 5 of the most amazing years of my life. So when motivation flagged, I'd look at that drawing and remember where I was going. It helped me get super clear on what I wanted my life to look like, and it became this focal point I could manifest that life around. You still have to take the steps to get there, but once you've envisioned where you're going, it's much easier. That's the power of visualization, especially when it's combined with a clear action plan, which is what we're going to do next. Okay, second exercise is you're going to write a letter from your future self. You have the vision for your future. Now we're going to visualize step by step, month by month, how you get to that goal reality. Imagine it's 1 year from today. You've achieved everything you wanted. You're living as your best self. Now write a letter back to yourself today. Dear present me, I'm writing to you from 1 year in the future. Describe your daily habits. What does a typical day look like? Describe your achievements. What have you accomplished? What are you proud of? Describe your progress month by month. Describe how you feel emotionally, physically, spiritually. How has your life changed? And finally, and do not forget this part, what were the biggest challenges? What almost made you quit? What pulled you off course? And how did you overcome them? How did you deal with those things? This does 2 things. It primes your nervous system for success, and it gives you a roadmap. When you write about the obstacles you overcame, you're actually identifying what you need to prepare for. So take your time with this, make it detailed, and make it feel real. So your dopamine system evolved to help you set a goal, chase it, and then adapt and achieve it. That's what it's designed for. When you align your actions with your purpose, your dopamine system works for you instead of against you. This is self-actualization in practice. Your brain's reward system actually supporting your highest potential instead of sabotaging it. Without purpose, you're going to default to the easy stuff, scrolling, drinking, whatever gives you that spike. But with purpose, your dopamine system locks onto your goal and keeps adjusting your behavior to get you there. So the final pages of this segment of the Joy Reset workbook should have a why statement exercise. I want you to go through and answer the questions there. You've decided what you want your life to look like and how you're going to get there. You've visualized the future and considered the challenges. Now you need to get clear on why you are doing all of this. You need a personal why strong enough to keep you going when things knock you off course. So that might be to do with your family or your kids or your community. Whatever it is, it needs to feel intensely motivating. Now let's talk about the practical skills you'll use during your 7-day reset. Mindfulness breaks automatic loops by pulling behavior into awareness. The dopamine cycle runs on autopilot. A trigger happens, you're stressed, you're bored, or you get a notification. Then a craving emerges. Then your pre-programmed behavior occurs without you thinking about it. All of this happens below conscious thought. Half the time you don't decide to pick up your phone and scroll. You do it without thinking. Mindfulness interrupts this by creating space between the trigger and the response. So making the unconscious conscious, enabling choice where there was only a reaction before, and training your mind to become conscious when these automatic loops get triggered. The gap, the moment between the urge and the action, that's where we can create real change. I'm going to teach you 3 mindfulness techniques that are simple, fast, and incredibly effective. First, we've got urge surfing, which takes 90 seconds. Research shows that most urges peak at about 90 seconds, then they start to fade if you don't act on them. So think of craving like a wave. It rises, peaks, and then falls. Your job is to observe it without acting. So when you feel an urge, set a timer for 90 seconds, close your eyes, focus on your breathing, and think about the urge. Just observe how it feels. After 90 seconds, you can choose one way or the other whether you're going to act. All right, train yourself to do this and you will build your self-control. If you're trying to eat healthier, for example, every time you have a craving to eat a snack, do your 90-second urge surf, then allow yourself to eat the snack after for the first week. I can guarantee you will be snacking less within a day or so, even though you are allowed to keep snacking. Same goes for scrolling, porn, drinking, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. The second approach is mindfulness journaling. So this is what you'll do throughout your 7-day reset. Every time you have an urge, you just write it down. The time, the trigger, the emotion, and what you chose to do afterwards. The simple act of writing creates space between stimulus and response and brings you back into conscious choice. And the last one we have is the body scan. So 30 to 60-second practice is all you need. You close your eyes, focus on your breathing, and then bring your attention to the top of your head and slowly move your attention or focus down your body. See if you have any sensations. Are you clenching your jaw? Are your shoulders hunched? All right? Move through your whole body and notice where you're holding tension. Where are cravings showing up? Anxiety often lives in your chest. Stress can often be in your shoulders. Cravings can often come up in your stomach. Just observing where these sensations are can help you control them. And this isn't some woo-woo bullshit. There's real science that backs up these techniques. Studies show that mindfulness strengthens your prefrontal cortex. That's your executive function. So your decision making, your impulse control, and your long-term thinking, all of it improves. It reduces craving intensity by creating that space between stimulus and response, weakening those automatic behaviors, and it normalizes dopamine and cortisol. Dopamine is obviously your motivation and learning chemical, and cortisol is your stress hormone. So mindfulness helps regulate both of them. And finally, it quiets rumination. So that negative thought loop that can often trigger cravings in the first place. So each moment of awareness helps to rebalance your reward system. And all you are doing is learning to wait, which means delaying gratification, which restores dopamine sensitivity. Every time you wait 90 seconds before acting, you're strengthening your prefrontal cortex. Then you are breathing, which is calming your nervous system and reducing impulsive actions. When you're stressed, cortisol floods your system and destroys your willpower. So deep breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system and brings you back to a calm state. And finally, you're able to choose which is strengthening your prefrontal cortex over the reward pathway. You're building the neural circuitry of conscious choice, which is the key to change. All right, here's the practical protocol. This is what you're doing starting today. First, let me be clear about what this is not. This is not deprivation. We're not going full monk mode here, where you cut out every pleasurable thing for a month. The 7-day protocol gently resets your dopamine system while building new neural pathways. Unlike traditional dopamine fasts that focus on elimination, we're doing progressive recalibration. Cold turkey hurts and makes you way more likely to fail. We've all tried quitting something cold turkey. By day 3, you're absolutely fucking miserable. By day 7, you've relapsed so hard that it's actually a bit embarrassing. I've been there, whether it was swearing off the beer and then getting so fucking drunk a week later that I made an ass out of myself in front of everyone I knew, or whether it was saying I was going to get into the best shape of my life and then the next week you're gorging on cake and calling yourself a fatty in your own head, right? Instead, what we want to do is build skills day by day, create awareness, create space, then build new behaviors. And by the end of 7 days, you've got momentum, skills, and measurable progress. But you've also got a system you can continue to use week after week to improve your situation. So here's how it breaks down. Day 1 and 2 is the awareness phase. Day 3 and 4, we're going to start creating space. Day 5 and 6, we're aiming to beat our score. And then on day 7 is when we complete the full reset. So let's break down each phase. Days 1 and 2 are all about awareness. Your only job is to notice and record. So track every urge. When do they happen? Morning, evening, after work. Note the time, location, intensity. We need data here. Remember, the easiest way to change something is to start tracking it. So note down the trigger. What happened right before? Did you finish a meeting? Did someone stress you out? Identify the emotion. What were you feeling? Was it boredom, stress, loneliness, anxiety? The critical point here is you're not trying to change anything yet. You're just observing. If you have the Joy Reset workbook printed, there are pages dedicated to it in there already. After 2 days of tracking, you'll start to see patterns. Maybe you always reach for your phone when you're bored. Maybe you scroll late at night when you're anxious. Maybe you drink when you feel socially awkward. Awareness helps us to weaken the loop, but it's also a powerful tool for building new habits and behaviors. If you always reach for your phone when you're bored, you're gonna need a new habit that helps with boredom. If you're always overeating when you're feeling lonely, then you need a new behavior that helps combat loneliness. The new behaviors you install in future will link directly to the data you gather here. Days 3 and 4, now we're gonna add one skill, the 90-second pause. When you notice a craving or a trigger, pause before acting. Take a deep breath, set a timer for 90 seconds, and observe the sensations without judging it. After the timer ends, you can choose consciously whether to proceed or not. This is huge, right? Most of the time, when you give yourself that 90-second gap, you will choose differently. You'll realize you weren't actually craving the thing. You were craving relief from an emotion. And this is going to help you break that automatic trigger action loop and strengthen your prefrontal cortex's control over impulsive behaviors. By the end of day 4, you'll probably find that 30 to 40% of your urges disappear during that 90-second window. Days 5 and 6, it's time to level up. So you need to look at your tracking data from days 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you checked your phone 20 times a day, your goal in this phase is to lower that to 10 times. If you watch porn 4 times, your goal is 2 times. Set a specific number, track your progress, and celebrate each reduction. And here's the key: apply your mindfulness skills when urges come up. Use that 90-second pause. Journal about what you're feeling. All right, you have the skills now, you need to use them. Every time you choose not to engage in the behavior, you're strengthening your prefrontal cortex and weakening the automatic pathway. Your dopamine receptors are starting to upregulate and things will start to feel rewarding again. All right, now we've come to the final day. By now, you've built awareness, created space between trigger and action, and proven that you can reduce frequency. Today, you decide what a full reset looks like for you. That can be to overcome 100% of your cravings, or it can be only engaging in your habit once. As long as it's measurable and it's an improvement from your starting point, it's a win. When urges come up, and they will, apply everything you've learned from this course. Observe your craving without acting. Redirect your energy towards something productive. positive. By the end of day 7, your brain has started establishing new neural pathways. You've created space and you've reclaimed some of that joy. So what can you expect after 7 days? Immediate results are increased awareness of automatic behaviors, stronger impulse control, more energy and mental clarity, and the beginning of dopamine receptor recovery. But this is an ongoing journey. So keep practicing your mindfulness skills, return to your future me vision regularly, and keep tracking and adjusting. The 7-day reset creates momentum. It proves that you're capable of change. Now you decide whether you go deeper. If you're ready to go deeper, then there's a next level. Because the reality is most people can build momentum for a week or 2, but if you haven't worked on your identity, you'll eventually drift back into old patterns. That's why 90% of New Year's resolutions fail. People quit their bad habits all the time and then end up back drinking or smoking or scrolling a few weeks later. The Identity Rewire helps you understand and overcome self-sabotage, rewrite the narratives that are holding you back, and make sense of your deeper motivations. It helps you align your identity with your goals and dreams. This is the work that creates lasting change. This is where you rebuild yourself from the ground up. So if you want to go deeper, then you can click the link below and check it out. Right, well done. You've completed the Joy Reset. If you've gotten value from this, then please DM me on Instagram and let me know. I would love to see your future me cartoons, so please send me pictures. All right? Good luck, Godspeed.